Hey, there we are. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning into the BAMF podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lafferty, and I am here with a frequent co-host, sometimes sole host. That is Walt Rebelliard. How you doing, Walt?
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Bien.
Yeah,
Dankeschön.
there we go.
And
That took a minute.
next to Walt, going from right to left, we have renowned RPG freelancer Christopher McLaughlin, working for Greater Than Games. And he also sometimes plies his trade here at Fainting Goat Games as well. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you, sir. Happily and proudly.
And last but not least, the second professor we have on our podcast today is Jason Chandro. How you doing, Jason?
It's a good day. I got to teach Watchmen today.
Hey.
I don't get to do that very often, so it's a good day.
That is pretty cool. I'm guessing when you teach Watchmen, do you touch upon any of the prequels and sequels?
Well, no. The short answer is no. The long answer is that we talk about kind of the publication history of the book, and I think it's important. I think can all learn a lot about how the sausage is made in America by looking at the way that Watchmen under Paul Levitz was kind of left alone for 20 years, but then in case of emergency, break Watchmen.
Did you hear? There was a story on Bleeding Cool a couple weeks ago. Someone is pitching to Amazon a Watchmen miniseries.
Yeah, the television series. Yeah, and, I'm actually kind of looking. I would actually kind of like to see that, and the reason why is because if there's multiple versions of Watchmen on film or video, it makes the one that we have less important. In other words, it's no longer judging everything by Zack Snyder's Watchmen. Let's throw multiple versions up there, and then Zack Snyder's kind of becomes just one of many. And I would like to see that.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Aren't the people that are working on it for HBO? Aren't these the same people that are like J.J. Abrams' 9/11 truther buddies, who are also responsible for Star Trek Into Darkness?
Well, I don't know the details on that. You sound like you know more about it than I do.
Well, I sort of have a half memory of why I have this sudden rage.
Right.
Because I mean, if there's anybody I would like to see do Watchmen less than Zack Snyder, it's the people behind Star Trek Into Darkness and people who ironically say that fire can't melt steel.
Right.
Okay, well, there's story October 7th, 2017 on Bleeding Cool is the Doomsday Clock stealth marketing for HBO's Watchmen TV series. So it's HBO. Jeff Johns, Damon Lindelof's. And that name sounds familiar, but I don't know what he's done. You guys know that name?
Yeah, I think that's one of the lost guys. I don't know if I can tie him into Star Trek Into Darkness. And Mr. Lindelof, if you had nothing to do with Star Trek Into Darkness, I apologize with every fiber of my being. Because I mean, short of maybe calling you a Holocaust denier, I don't know what meaner thing I could say about a person.
Well, he just
a television series would do some really neat things with Watchmen. It would put a lot of the stuff back that Snyder took out. The alien. The teleporting alien would be back. A lot of the supporting cast members that got cut would be back, and that would be kind of cool to see. And they would probably mine all that before Watchmen stuff, which would be awful. I would be interested to see it because I think it would help decenter Snyder's version.
Kind of becomes like Snyder's version. Kind of becomes like Bakshi's Lord of the Rings then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's have 4 or 5 different versions of Watchmen, and that way we can stop talking about them and start talking about the comic book again.
All right, just to finish up this thought, Damon Lindelof, I'm looking at his Wikipedia right now. Co-creator, showrunner for Lost, written and produced for Crossing Jordan, wrote for Naz Bridges, Cowboys and Aliens, Prometheus, Star Trek Into Darkness, Tomorrowland.
Yeah. Okay, well then seriously, fuck that guy.
All right, well, there we go. And let's see, moving right along, we're here to talk about Thor.
Yes, not Watchmen.
Not Watchmen, but Thor. And I just want to start off by being positive and saying I liked it. And I thought it contains two of the best Led Zeppelin videos that will ever be made. And I kind of wish the Executioner had gotten more to do and that they had about the Warriors 3 getting killed in 2 seconds.
Yep.
Other than that, I'm just going to effuse like everybody else will about how great the comedy was, and that was a great blending of comedy and action, and worked in a lot of grace notes, paying homage to the epic Walt Simonson run, and make fanboys like us happy. Let's go from left to right. Jason, what do you think?
Oh wow. Well, I agree with you about a lot of that stuff, both the positive and the negative. I enjoyed it. It was a fun film. I went with a colleague, coworker, friend, and she knew nothing about Thor at all. Like, she knew that there was a god named Thor, and he has a brother named Loki, and that's really all she knew. And so I was sort of telling her, like, okay, this is that guy, and that's this guy, and oh look, it's Matt Damon as Loki in the first 5 minutes of the movie. So there, but I liked it. I'm with you on the Scourge thing. With the Scourge story, where he stood alone at Gellerbrew, is one of the greatest comic book stories, in my opinion, ever written. Like, it's one of the best 20-page sequences, and the ending of that story with Scourge's sacrifice and his decision to no longer be a C-list character. I just love the shit out of that story, and so I thought that and they were obviously setting it up, because the first minute that we see Scourge, he's got the machine guns, and there's no reason for Scourge to have machine guns unless they are doing that story. So we knew it was going to happen. And then I saw the bridge, and I thought, okay, so he's going to be holding the bridge against Teal. No. And in my opinion, they kind of whiffed it. I didn't feel like Scourge's sacrifice at the end was suitably dramatic, suitably heavy. It would have been very gutsy for him to suddenly take over and do the last stand instead of Thor. And that was in many ways the kind of non-traditional storyline. And I would have loved that non-traditional storyline. I don't think that they quite had enough guts to do it, though. They spent so much time building up Chris Hemsworth's Thor to then take him off at the last minute and let Scourge do it. I don't think they felt like that wouldn't work, but that's the ending I actually wanted to see. I was also really disappointed in such a quick dismissal of all of the other stuff from the first two movies. I know that most people don't like Jane Foster. They don't like the cinematic Jane Foster. They don't like the Warriors 3, and people are bored with all those characters. But I liked them. I liked Jane, and I was disappointed that they were either killed silently. I don't think the Warriors 3 even had a line. Hogan had a couple of lines, but Volstagg and Fandral, I think they die without even a single line. And I was disappointed with the casualness with which. I mean, I understand the drama.
Can we say they Colin Bakered him?
Yeah. I guess
okay. All right. Yes. Sorry to interrupt.
And no, it's all right. I'm going on. And I was disappointed with that, because I like those characters and I like those stories. I've invested in. I thought. Oh, I keep talking. I should shut up. We'll come back to me. Somebody else go.
Walt, what do you think?
I loved Hela. I loved Cate Blanchett as Hela. I really enjoyed that. Especially the things that she would do to create the crown, where she would brush back her hair and the crown would grow. I thought that effect was great. Something I didn't think that was going to hit me as hard was when the boys are talking to Odin in the beginning. And Odin's just telling him, hey, this is, I'm pretty much done here. I need you guys to step up, but like, I really enjoyed that interaction. Because one of the last things I suffered through with Anthony Hopkins was that Transformers movie that was just out.
Oh, Jesus, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I got nieces and nephews. They like Transformers, so.
Yeah.
There you go. And he was, his performance was all over the map. But this, I mean, it was a mighty, someone who is mighty and strong, who realizes that he's at the end of what he's capable of doing, and now he has to pass that mantle on to someone else. I really enjoyed that scene. I thought him turning into sparkle dust was a little, but the actual the interaction between them I really enjoyed. And for a second there, he says at that point, I Asgard is where her people are, and this, and he points around, this is home. For a second there, I thought we were going to get the storyline like they did in Marvel Comics about 4 years ago, where Ragnarok happens, and then when they restarted the title, Ragnarok had crashed and started growing in the middle of Montana. And
Asgard.
Excuse me, Asgard.
Yeah, they would get that if they had Chris Hemsworth for 3 more movies.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was a fun story. I really enjoyed that story.
I agree with you totally on Anthony Hopkins, by the way. He still does dignify like nobody else.
Yes. He and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed his portrayal of Loki portraying him. That was fun in that scene. I mean, in general, I'd like to point back to Jason's article that he wrote on the place where he does a lot of his writing. It's Fifth World, right?
You're very sweet to mention that. Thank you. Yes, the Fifth World is a blogging enterprise I've joined with several other wonderfully talented and intelligent writers, and I'm very lucky to be in that group. But yeah, I did some thoughts on Thor as the first time that in film comics love to use, which is sending a superhero into space.
I was just going to point that out. That's the highlight of that article for me.
Well, thank you. So that you can jettison all of their other supporting characters and villains and just focus on the character and kind of figure out what you want to do with them. It's a classic new creative team comes to a character story. And there's a lot of famous examples in comics, but I don't think it's ever been done to a superhero on film.
Hello, is somebody at the door?
Oh
yeah, sorry, that was me. That was me.
Thank God somebody else heard that. Because that sounds like the 2 notes that you hear before you turn around. Rod Serling is standing there,
right?
This man's about to enter a nightmare
for you on his typewriter.
Sorry about that. I got various things going on right now, but
yeah, Tessa Thompson is Valkyrie too. Oh my God, she was fun. I really enjoyed her.
I would agree. Chris, what do you think?
Well, they may kick me out of they may revoke my nerd card, but this is a film that I came away with very strong feelings about, acknowledging that it's entirely valid for people to have the exact opposite strong feelings about.
Right.
Because to lay my cards on the table, Thor has never done anything for me. Yeah. I mean, it's just.
I remember you liked this character going in.
Yeah, I mean, it's people spouting silly dialogue. They're gods. I can't relate to them. I mean, they're fighting for the greater glory of Fartenheim and Pepsiheim and Gloria Steinemheim and all this other. I mean, and it just seems so out of place with a Marvel universe that it's at its best when it's grounded. And the first Thor was on in the background, and my wife was going, "Are you watching this, honey?" Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I actually went to see The Dark World as part of my husbandly duty, and oh man, I literally went back and checked. My review of Dark World was literally better than Man of Steel, which is like saying better than being repeatedly clubbed in the groin. So I mean, the thought that I would look forward to a Thor movie months in advance means some radical changes had to happen. And believe me, if you've seen the movie, we got radical changes. Now, if you were cool with Fartenheim is in trouble because Schlappykins the demon is about to eat it, and the ring of vagueness is at stake. I'm sorry, I was talking about fantasy things. You know, if that worked for you, then great. I mean, you had to hate this movie because they literally, they pretty literally blow up the first two films. They get rid of Asgard. They kill off most of the old supporting cast. It's just, you know, if you like those first two movies, I could really totally understand if you came out feeling like this was just a 2-hour middle finger at you. But as a guy who didn't like the old Thor, I loved this movie. I mean, really, I guess I'm the poser Thor fan. You know, I'm the fake Thor fan that they were aiming for, because I can't. It's rare that I've had a better time at the movies. I thought it was funny. I thought the comedy worked. I thought the acting was top notch for the most part. I thought the story held up well enough, and I just came away really loving this. But
well, you're not alone. This is done better than the other two Thor movies.
Well, I mean, they're not aiming at the people who are like emotionally tied into the fate of Jotunheim, or the sword of cuttingness and all this other usual fantasy crap.
Well, so setting aside for a minute, your obvious contempt for anything fantasy.
Yeah, I don't have a fantasy gene, so yeah, please. That's why I want to put my cards on the table. You know, it's.
I think that most people kind of generally agreed, whether you personally thought so or not, that the Thor films were kind of the weakest link in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, at least.
Iron Man 2.
I will defend Iron Man 2.
You don't have to. It's fine.
But most people kind of, they think of Thor and, like, they just don't really have. He's kind of been met to a lot of fans, and And I think that as a person who did like the original films, I didn't see it the same way that Chris did. I thought there were a lot of things in there in the film. I mean, yeah, they blew up Asgard and they killed off a bunch of the cast members. But at the same time, there was a lot of wallowing in the old films too. There was a lot of wink and a nod to the old movies, and a lot of sort of, well, I loved them too, but we're going to move on now. Kind of.
But there were even more nods to the Avengers.
Well, yeah, there are lots of, I mean, absolutely. And I think that from a marketing production standpoint, the filmmakers felt that not many people wanted to see a third Thor movie that were like Thor's 1 and 2. They just felt like, there's an old, you know this, you know how this works in comics, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
Or how it used to. Where a book would be selling poorly. Now they just cancel it, right?
Yes.
Now they just cancel it. But in the old days, and I'm talking about the 70s and the 60s.
Right up to the DC implosion, yeah.
When a book was doing poorly, they would give it to a new writer and say, do whatever you want with it. The sales can't get worse. And from this, we got some amazing stories, right? That's where we got Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and the whole relevancy era. And that's where we got Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. And
Starlin on Captain Marvel and Adam Warlock, and
another great example. Yes, exactly. So this was really a film version of that.
Oh yeah.
They were like, well, nobody really gives a fuck about Thor, so let's get a great visionary director and let him do whatever he wants with it. And it was successful. I mean, I am a Thor fan, and I love the movie.
Well, good. And just to finish up, I wanted to talk about some things that I liked and didn't like that I think that maybe I'm not seeing in a lot of other online commentary here. If it's one thing that I really dislike about most modern cinema, is it's so rare to find a film where you get an actor gets a real opportunity to develop a character. Every now and again you'll get a wonderful piece of cinema like Inside Llewyn Davis, and you just get to be inside somebody else's skin for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And so the acting cream has had to rise to the top, because it's like, okay, you've got 30 seconds to convey all this complicated emotion, go.
Yeah.
And in this school of micro acting that's developed nowadays, I have developed a supreme lifetime appreciation for two actors and two very specific performances. I absolutely adore Alan Rickman in the last Harry Potter film, conveying all of his sense of loss and love over Lily Potter with just his eyes and his face.
Yeah.
Because
he was dying.
Because the last Harry Potter film felt like 2 hours of a video game I wasn't allowed to play, and then that one incredible scene which caused me to tear up.
Yeah.
And I got a similar reaction at Anthony Hopkins' death scene as Odin.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, your character is now feeling the regrets and disappointments and bad things you've done over the course of several centuries. Go! You have 30 seconds.
Right.
And damned if Hopkins didn't pull it off. I mean, I really, really felt what we needed to feel with nothing showy, nothing over the top, nothing I ate his liver with fava beans.
Yeah.
Just bringing it home with it was like a master instant acting class, and just
it really
blown away by that.
It really reminded me of the death scene of the Ancient One in Doctor Strange, which was also
in a way, yeah. But Tilda Swinton gets to go out chatty.
Ah, okay.
She does a fabulous job with it, but she gets an extended monologue, especially in terms of modern cinema. Hopkins is doing with face and eyes. Okay. And they're both valid choices, but they impressed me for different reasons. And Tilda Swinton is amazing. Don't think I'm hating on Tilda Swinton. Love Tilda Swinton, but they're different scenes.
Yeah. Okay.
The other thing I really, I mean, okay, Kate Blanchett is an international treasure. Okay. Right. She stole my heart in The Aviator, and I've never gotten it back. I mean, I just absolutely. I mean, oh my God, Kate Blanchett in a Marvel movie. It's like they were peeking into my dreams. Yeah. And she's terrific. That said, after seeing Michael Keaton's layered performance as Adrian Toomes in the Spider-Man movie, it's like, crap, another villain whose motivation is their evil. I mean, granted, they would have had to have cut out some moderately funny lines, but I would have been so tempted to make her more along the lines of like DC's death, a little melancholy. Maybe a little. I don't mean to be bad. I'm just a necessary function of the universe, and you guys are in my way.
Yeah.
But it just, it was a little let down that, hey, you got Kate Blanchett and you're asking her, be evil. Okay. Seemed like a waste.
And it's interesting too, because Simonson there's this motivation for Hel in the Thor comics. That is, Thor is the great champion, and Hel sees him as a prize. And she wants him in Hel. If I can conquer Thor, I can conquer anyone. It's kind of it's a test of the power of death. And that would have been a perfectly good motivation, I think, for her.
Yeah, a lot better than just being evil. Yeah. Okay, and here's my last thought.
Oh, go ahead, please.
My last thought, and then I'll shut up, I promise. Okay. Politics and movies are a very tricky thing these days. I mean, isn't it the day that like people are going to walk outside and scream? It seems like any trace of subtlety or nuance in politics is gone, and even more so in artistic politics. I mean, I'm kind of up to hear of things where like the villain is like Donald Trump. It's pretty obvious what you're doing, what you're trying to get across, because you're standing on my chest and screaming it at me. And I just loved how this Thor movie had a really good political message that I didn't feel was shot into my chest with a ballista.
So what do you think that message was, Chris?
That as much as we might debate the illegal part of immigration, we should never, ever, 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 ever be afraid or hate immigrants. Right. And they didn't beat me over the head with it because which was a good choice. And also in the end, the script and the filmmaker himself, and oh God, his last name is Waititi. Yeah. Please, sir, if you're listening, forgive me. I'm a hillbilly. I love your work, but pronunciation is not our thing. So, but the love is sincere, even if my vocabulary can't back it up. But oh my God, he's such a talented filmmaker. He brought that message home without having to trebuchet it into the theater.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, he's a New Zealander, and Kiwis are known for their subtlety. So.
Well, yeah. I totally get that off of Peter Jackson's early films.
But yes. HBO is talking about doing a Lord of the Rings miniseries right now.
Yes.
So, please let it be based off
some
of
video games.
I want that for the same reason I want the Watchmen series. I want it to unseat. I want it to just be one more version. But every time I think of Gandalf, I don't have to think of Ian McKellen.
Fair enough. Walt,
you
you
guys
say something about 5 minutes ago?
Yeah. Have you guys seen the meme? Speaking of Lord of the Rings, the Lord of the Rings memes about the elves crossing over into the Marvel movies?
No.
I have not.
So it's a picture of Kate Blanchett, Hugo Weaving, and then the guy who played in Guardians of the Galaxy. His name is escaping me. The guy who played the Accuser.
Ronan.
So they all played elves in Lord of the Rings, and then they all play Marvel villains in all the Marvel movies, and it's side-by-side comparison with their villains.
That's nice. Oh, I guess they're all owned by the same company now. So,
yeah, well, rumors that Disney is looking to buy Fox, so pretty soon it'll just be Disney owns everything.
Well, they can redo the X-Men movies once everyone ages out of superhero age. Once Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Hemsworth and Chris Evans are too old to do this anymore. Because I got a feeling the Star Wars Golden Goose might be, I don't know. How much longer can you keep fighting stormtroopers? At some point, don't you have to actually win over the evil empire?
And that's what killed the extended universe.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Okay, whatever else the prequels did, they proved that the Star Wars movies don't have to be a damn bit good to make money.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And Episode 7, whatever else it proved, you can just keep remaking the same plot over and over and over and over again and make a killing.
Well,
and whatever else one may think of George Lucas, I understand his frustration that once it was out of his hands, it no longer tried to be anything different. Because as much as I dislike the prequels, and I dislike them a lot, they tried to tell a different story.
I don't think you even like the regular Star Wars movies, the original ones. Do you, Chris?
I hate what they did to cinema. The first one it's fine drive-in entertainment. I mean, the older I get, the more I realize that only 2 people in the entire movie know how to act. And the second one gets a little deeper, gets a little more fun. It's nothing that makes me want to build a world religion around it, but it's a decent enough movie. And the third is just an abomination. I mean, it's just so unbelievably fucking terrible. It's the only film I've ever been thrown out of, actually.
Wait, we need to hear this story.
Well, let's just say that 8th grade me was a little loud and a little colorful in expressing my dislike in a theater full of children, and the owner was a little upset with me, and well, I was asked not to return to that theater.
Sounds like he may have had good cause.
Well, at that time, Star Wars was my religion, and seeing it end with the Ewoks, I mean, it's just
yeah, the Ewoks are terrible, right?
Are you telling me there was a time when you were a big Star Wars fan?
Well, I mean, you have to understand.
Given your age, I figured that had to have happened at some point.
Okay.
Well,
you have to understand in rural Virginia, anything that didn't involve NASCAR, chewing tobacco, or mocking anyone different than you, it was like a little manna from heaven. Finding places that would sell comic books in my town, or or something on TV that wasn't hee haw.
Yeah.
Part of Star Wars was its timing. There really just wasn't anything like it at the time. That was always its greatest strength.
Right.
But now we live in an age where everything is like it, including every freaking movie in the series.
Yeah. Right.
Well, I kind of feel like we all feel a little more relieved now that we got the tension removed and we know how it's about Star Wars. All right, did you guys see the last episode of the cartoon of The Last Avatar?
Are you talking about Avatar, the Last Airbender?
Oh God, what's wrong with me? Yeah, Avatar the Last Airbender. Forgive me.
You're talking about the cartoon series, the Avatar cartoon series.
Yeah, let's pretend the movies don't exist.
Okay.
And, well, no, because the big bad in that is a very powerful guy who's a firebender, and the last Avatar can bend anything, but he's mainly an airbender, and he really wants to resolve it without killing anybody. That's his big quest. And he's going on spirit quests and talking to all the previous avatars, and they're all like, nah, man, you got to kill this guy. Nah, for real, the ghost of the Dalai Lama in his world is showing up and saying, nah, you got to kill that fucker. And he's just really torn in anguish because he doesn't want to do it. He believes you can solve any problem without, killing someone. So how are you going to do it? And they actually, they pull it off really well. He uses his, let's just call his connection to the Force, but his bending ability to, he severs the big bad's connection to the Force.
Yeah.
Same, he nullifies him as a threat, but lets him live. Right. And the way they did it, they sold it really well. It worked really well as a dramatic conclusion. And I was thinking, this is somebody who saw Return of the Jedi when they were a kid and were so disappointed they wanted to do a similar resolution and make it actually work.
The one where Darth Vader lives.
Yeah, well, Darth Vader lives, but I mean, there's a whole fight scene where your hero is saying, I'm not going to fight you.
Yeah.
And it was horribly unsatisfying dramatically. But in this one, I mean, they fight, but the hero is, I'm not going to kill you. And they find a way to make that work where it's dramatically satisfying.
I gotcha. Okay.
So anyway, that's if you ever, it's a really good show. If you ever get motivated to watch American-made, anime, it's out there on Netflix. So
yeah, I've always thought the original source material must have been pretty good, just because of the level of outrage and like genuine vitriol at how badly the movie botched it up. I mean, if you make a bad version of something that nobody cares about, you're not going to get that kind of outcry.
And the influence of Avatar is immense. I mean, in D&D, in the player's handbook, there's a monk that can control the elements. I mean, that class does not exist without Avatar.
Oh yeah, it's a whole thing. I mean, if I had to pick an anime, that would be the one I would want to watch. But I mean, I got a buddy I used to work with who has a home theater system that's just like, he's a guy who works in IT who, single dude in his 40s, so he has a badass home theater system with like tiered seating. And
like you do.
Yeah, like you do. And every once in a while, he has everyone over to watch anime, and I can kind of take or leave 90% of all anime. It's sort of this weird phenomena I don't quite get, but every once in a while I'm like, okay, this is a really good show. I get it. And that's how I was introduced to Avatar: The Last Airbender. And yeah, it's a fun show. It's worth watching. Speaking of stuff on Netflix, I was talking to Walt before we got on here. I've been watching Mindhunter, and oh my God, I keep saying it's a really fucked up show. I wish it had a deeper criticism, but I guess the phrase mundanity of evil is kind of the best way to describe it, because the first couple episodes are talking about this guy, which is it Edmund Kemper? Walt?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he looks like a dude you see a million times at, say, RPG conventions. He's 6'5", 300 pounds. He's a big guy, but moves with kind of an odd delicateness.
You stole my stapler.
Yeah. But you don't often see dudes like that on TV. I mean, almost everyone on TV, looks a certain way. And, and the dialogue is very naturalistic, and it almost just feels, too real. I mean, usually when you have any kind of media about a serial killer, they kind of play up
how crazy they are. How
crazy and wacky they are. And this guy just kind of explains how he became a serial killer, and it's very easy to understand. And that's creepy as fuck. I watched 2 episodes last night, and I was like, yeah, I got to tap out. I mean, it's incredibly well done, but just too creepy. Anyway, so I don't know if that's a recommendation or not, but
sounds like it to me.
Yeah. So you guys watch anything good this week, other than Thor, of course?
I'm really enjoying Discovery.
I like it too.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. I don't have the specialized network.
What, Pirate Bay?
The last episode was
the Vamp podcast does not endorse piracy of any. I'm sorry.
Oh, of course not. Absolutely not. Yes.
The last episode was a classic TOS premise, and the Spore Planet, where the away team lands on the planet, and the guy who's typically without emotion, in this case not the main character, but the breathes a lung full of spores, and now suddenly he's happy all the time and wants everybody to just mellow out.
I'm not going back, Jim.
It's a straight up, sort of premise from the original series, and it had lots of great Prime Directive in it, where they arrive on the planet thinking that it's uninhabited, and they're going to use this natural geological formation to do their mission. But as soon as they find out the planet's got aliens on it, we're like, well, now we can't just use it. Now they own it. It belongs to them. So now we have to get permission, and that's classic Trek plot right there. Of course, a lot of people that aren't going to like it because it's dark, and it is. I'm not going to try and say that it's not a dark and moody reinterpretation of your favorite television series, because it totally is. But I'm liking it, and I'm a card-carrying member of the Captain Tilly fan club. I think that Tilly she's my favorite character on that show. Even though she has almost no lines these days, but I still love her.
Chris, what do you think?
Well, I'm only up through episode 4, so whatever comments I make are with that in mind. It took till about episode 3 or 4 before it really started getting to going for me. But once it did, oh god, I'm hooked, and I kind of appreciate how it's in the best possible way trying to be every single Trek before that.
It is. It totally is. It has like built-in nods to every other series.
It's a war story like Deep Space Nine. Yeah. It likes the uber nerdy science like Next Gen. There's a lot of statement casting and just stuff that's in there for like weird, almost Twilight Zone weirdness, kind of like Voyager wanted to do when intermittently. I mean, Voyager never figured out what it was, but that seemed to be the thing they kept coming back to. They want to play around in the margins of Star Trek history, in the kind of its Rosencrantz and Guildenstern way, the way that Enterprise did, especially during its last season. And they've obviously taken the set design from the Abrams verse, like fake Trek stuff. And when I found out that like the design of the Discovery, I sort of half suspected it, but somebody on my friends list confirmed it for me, that the Discovery is based off of one of Ralph McQuarrie's redesigns for the Enterprise for the aborted Planet of the Titans movie. I'm like, now that's really paying tribute to all of your ancestors.
It's gonna get even worse, because I just read the one sentence synopsis for the second half of the season, where they have been cast off far from home and they have to struggle to get back.
Huh.
It's Voyager. I mean, like, they're just
only hopefully it'll be good this time.
I hope so.
And I haven't mentioned the original series, but I have a special thing about the original series element. Okay, I'm assuming like everybody who has any interest in Star Trek watched the free one they put on actual CBS.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people losing their shit about like a Starfleet officer mutinying. And I'm like, how much TOS have you watched? It's like every other week there's some captain, some high-ranking Starfleet officer that's found a reason to lose their goddamn mind. I mean, Ron Tracy, Matt Decker, the Merrick. I mean, come on. I mean, really, that's what you're gonna ding the show for?
That's the hill to die on, huh?
Yeah. It's like the people. Okay. I've already expressed my view. I'm not a fan of Force Awakens, but the people that got pissed because, what's her name? The lead female character. I'm drawing Ray. Is that it? Yeah. Ray suddenly gets abilities out of nowhere, and I'm like, did you watch the first movie? Star Wars is about space wizards who suddenly get whatever skills they need. If you have a problem with that, you should have checked out 40 years ago. So yeah.
Just in praise of Voyager, I gotta say it was the best Jerry Ryan vehicle I've ever seen.
No, Dark Skies. Dark Skies was better.
Way better than Boston Commons, though.
But Dark Skies was better.
All right, I have not seen that one, so I'll have to give that to you. So, was there something else we want to talk about? We were going to talk about Thor. Everyone loves it. Sounds like. And we
a little disappointed with some of the. I kind of wish that they hadn't done the Scourge thing at all, because I thought that the payoff was such a miss, and that I wish that they had kind of left him out and just not dealt with it. And I missed the original cast, but I enjoyed the film.
Jeff Goldblum. What about Jeff Goldblum?
Fabulous.
He was at his Goldblumiest.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you guys think of the aliens? The what do you call it? The gladiators.
The one that the character that Waititi himself voices.
Yeah.
Absolutely stole the movie. Darn near stole the movie for me.
As I understand it, now I have to confess something. I have not read the Planet Hulk story.
Oh, dude, what the fuck? You teach comic books professionally? What's wrong with you, Jason?
You're like that guy in my class, Mike. whenever they ask me about some obscure comic no one's ever heard of, and I'm like, have you read this? And I'm like, no. And they say, but you're Dr. Comics. And I'm like, get off my back.
You haven't read the Foozle? You haven't read the Foozle? What's wrong with you?
Now, but my point about bringing up Planet Hulk is that those characters, those Gladiator characters, are in Planet Hulk. And my understanding is they have really complex and kind of deep character stories. And a lot of the Planet Hulk fans were not pleased that they got played off for jokes. Much in the same way that, Chris, you weren't happy with the way Gila had kind of no motivation, and she could have been a much more interesting character. Other people felt the same way about those Gladiator characters.
You know how we talk about the Executioner didn't really have the story he had in the comics?
Yeah.
That's kind of the way with Planet Hulk. Because Planet Hulk is sort of like Bruce Banner goes to, Burroughs' Mars.
Yeah.
It was when they had the Illuminati in Marvel, and so Professor Xavier, Tony Stark, Reed Richards get together and say, Bruce, you keep fucking shit up. So we're putting in a rocket, sending you to space.
That's the excuse to start the plot.
Yeah, and he gets to, basically William Burroughs' Mars and gets into a gladiator, scene and becomes the best gladiator and leads a revolution, takes over the planet, gets married, has a kid. And then he has to come back to, Earth, and that crossover event kind of sucked. But the characters in that, Planet Hulk were unrecognizable except for, some of the physicality. There was a big rock guy, but the characterization was completely different.
Right. And so a lot of Planet Hulk fans weren't too keen on that. I don't envy the directors of these movies. I don't envy the screenwriters because they have this kind of solvable dilemma. Do we come up with brand new stories using characters no one's ever heard of, or do we try and do the old stories part for part, and they try to walk a middle line. They try to say, well, we're going to tell a new story, but we're going to use some elements of the old stuff so that the audience can still tap their nostalgia gene. And
it almost turns into an Easter egg at some point. So we're like, oh yeah, I recognize that guy.
Exactly, that's exactly what it is. And it alienates some fans and others that others don't care, but some fans really does.
Yeah, apparently one of the gladiator faces on the tower was Beta Ray Bill.
Beta Ray Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who I was really hoping to see show up in the cinematic universe, and maybe we still will. I mean, there's that next movie that's going to be a lot of it in space, I suspect. But
Well, based on the San Diego trailer, yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of bummed me out because Thor. Spoilers: San Diego trailer. Thor shows up beginning of that movie. His body, crashes into the windshield of the Guardians of the Galaxy spaceship. Yeah. So whatever happens between the end of this movie and the beginning of that movie, somehow Thor isn't on the USS Asgard anymore.
Well, but okay. But one thing everybody should fully remind themselves before they go see these Avengers movies, because they have no right to complain about it. Gee, we're dealing about a couple of movies about a device that has the power to reset reality.
Yes.
And Lord knows nothing Marvel would stoop to the cheap gimmick of just resetting reality at the end.
Yeah, but in the cinematic universe, you think they would?
I totally think they will. Absolutely.
Well,
think about it this way. Okay, you can't do Infinity Gauntlet without universal destruction. I mean, there's no other point in even bringing that up. And then what are they going to do at the end? Thanos destroys everything. Roll credits. They have to do a reset or stop making these movies. And guess which it's going to be?
It's going to be a partial reset. They're not going to say, for example, oh, Thor was always played by someone else. They're not going to reset that. Thor will still live in Thor. He'll retire. Iron Man will, get recast or whatever. I don't think they'll erase the histories of those characters. I don't think it'll be like a Crisis where they reset the history of the universe. I don't think they'll do that because there's too many characters who have just been introduced. They're not going to erase Doctor Strange's past so they can do it all.
Yeah, but if you do like an end of the galaxy quest, where, oh no, everything's gone. Oh wait, we got this plot device that can.
Yes, and they'll totally do that. Yeah, he'll blow up the Earth or whatever, and then he'll make it back, but it will be exactly as it was.
Or he blows up the Asgard spaceship, and at the end, Thor gets to resurrect it. I don't know. Who knows? We'll find out in 2018, 2019? 2018, right?
Yep.
After the Black Panther trailer. Who's seen it? What do you think?
Fabulous. Oh my God.
Fabulous. Loved it.
Walt's got an opinion.
Oh my God, I loved it. I loved it because everybody's sick of the same old thing. Like I have friends who actually work in the comic book industry, and they have said repeatedly, I am so fucking sick of superheroes. And it's not so much that they're sick of superheroes per se, because like when you see stuff like some of these indie companies like Lion Forge or the guys who are doing Powerverse or whatever, it's they're just sick of seeing the same story again and again and again, because like you were just saying, if we still want to keep telling stories, we got to reset things, because we are written by pro wrestling writers. So I mean, but to have
are you saying wrestling's fake?
I'm not saying anything. I'm not going to take somebody's Santa Claus away from them. But like, I saw a great interview with Mr. Bozeman. His first name Chad Bozeman? Chadwick. There we go. Right. I saw a great interview with him where they were asking him about his accent. They were asking about Black Panther's accent. Did you see this article?
I read it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And he was like, something? And he goes into this really interesting thing about how a lot of the accents you see in movies are all based off of how certain places really pushed colonialism, and then that aspect of language invading that culture also changed the native accent. And this is a country that's never been conquered.
England and France and Belgium and Germany, they conquered huge parts of Africa. So if you were a wealthy, educated Black man, that meant that you had gone to England to get your education. And so your accent was European. And he was like, fuck that. This is the place that never got conquered. So they have an African accent.
And I thought that was great. I thought the iconic look of Wakanda was really well done. The modern mixed with the natural. I really enjoyed some of the fight scenes. I love what they're doing with like Black Panther's suit. Not so much like, hey, look, I'm bulletproof. I can take a shot from 3 feet because vibranium absorbs all vibration. But like when he jumps on that car and rips off that tire just by sticking his hand on the rotating wheel, I was like, awesome. He runs up the building, but at the same time, as all this badass stuff is going on, his major problem is he's still plagued by the fact that he doesn't know if he's going to be a good king, and they talk about that in the trailer. And I think that to have that much power and still feel helpless, that's what sold the trailer for me.
Well, I thought the smartest thing they did was hire the director of Creed to make Black Panther.
Yeah.
And they're doing an Afrofuturism movie. And I'm not the target audience for this movie, and I love the shit out of it because of that.
But in a way, isn't that like one of the great geniuses of the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe? Is that there are parts of it that can be completely completely terrific, and not for you.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, thanks to Inhumans, they've now done something for people that like stuff that's absolutely terrible. I mean, they're covering every conceivable base.
Well, the other great example for me of that was Jessica Jones, which was very much made for a feminist audience. And I mean, I understood it. I got where it was coming from, but I was not the target audience for that show. And I liked it very much because of that. And I loved seeing the reaction that female fans had to Jessica Jones, like at last a superhero that I see myself in. And I think that's wonderful. And I have no shortage of superhero shows made for middle-aged white dudes. So I'm happy to, I watch those all day long. But
so in identifying with Jessica Jones, you swear and drink a lot too?
He's an academic, Walt. What do you think?
It's empty, isn't it?
Bring on the profanity.
Hey, let me ask you guys a question. I was talking to Walt about this, and this is a nitpick, and I'll admit it, but there's a bit there at the end when they're fighting the zombie Vikings on the Bifrost Bridge.
Yes.
And this should be epic as fuck, right? And I was just thinking, I'm kind of bored with this fight already. I don't know what it was, just maybe like I was saying to Walt before the show, we got kind of an embarrassment of riches in terms of really good genre shows with really great choreography. But just there towards the end, I was like, they could cut out a lot of the stuff right now, and I would be fine.
I guess we're probably not going to get it back, judging by the fact that Chris Hemsworth today sent out a video of in memoriam for Mjolnir. Special video memorializing the death of the hammer. You would think that, as Chris just pointed out, we've got a bad guy who can rewrite reality. If we need the hammer back, we could make it. I'm gonna miss Meow Meow, as Darcy so affectionately referred to it in the second and first film. I liked Mjolnir, and I thought that they made a way to make it look good. And I realize it's completely illogical. Like, it makes no. I remember as a 9-year-old wondering, wait a minute, you throw the hammer and then you catch it and it makes you fly? Like, this makes no goddamn sense, right? Like,
the hammer pulls you off.
Yeah, the hammer pulls you off, as it does. And yet I still love it. I loved the way that they made the hammer look in the movies.
I've got one here. It's in my garage right now next to my gardening implements. So yes. That was my Halloween costume this year. I was Thor. Well, my son insisted on it, and it was much more dignified than Robin. So that's what I went with. But I hate to nitpick again. I love the movie. Don't get me wrong, but I mean the power was in you all along. Really? Okay, fine. I mean, but wasn't the first point of the movie that he didn't have the power and he had to become worthy of the power by doing this big sacrifice thing? No, okay.
I didn't buy that at all. He just wanted to get rid of the hammer. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I understand we're blowing up the first two movies, and hey, isn't this movie great? And yeah, I get it. It just, I kind of like the first two movies. I mean, I understand they had their flaws, but But yeah, there again.
The hammer is a distinctive characteristic of the character of Thor, and I don't like him without it. That's just me.
Yeah. Well, if you have to redefine a character, at least you do it in a way that's fun and doesn't suck. Because lots of times when they do that, it does. So
yes. Maybe you'll get the Beta Ray Bill hammer, the big golden one.
Yeah, that would be cool. Maybe they're in the middle of a fight scene in the next movie, and someone tosses him a hammer at a dramatically opportune moment or something. But yeah.
Now, who's going to be able to clean up the pieces of Mjolnir that are on the ground? Because you're not worthy to pick it up, or does shattering it shatter the magic that made it do that?
They got the most virtuous janitor in the world, but then again, I mean, didn't the fight between Hela and Suture destroy Asgard? I mean, physically, it isn't. I'm assuming it got burned up when all that happened, but who knows? I thought Steve Rogers was dead and frozen at the 5 minutes before Captain America ended, and then hey, he's back. So I'm just joking about that, but you get my point. So
just to cross over to comics for a second, is anybody else as in love with the term icer as I am?
Oh yeah, you had Captain America this week, huh? I
saw that preview, and that was a bring the wife downstairs because you have to see that moment. I thought that was so incredibly clever.
Yeah, Mark Waid is writing Captain America again, and you need to read it. It's a thing of beauty. It's really great.
Huh.
I haven't seen it, Chris, so tell me what you mean.
Well, okay. Steve Rogers goes to this all-American like hot dog and cantaloupe festival or whatever, just to get back in touch with normal Americans.
Right.
And he finds some people talking about Captain America and how much they love Captain America, and he wants to talk to them and see what they like about Captain America. And he mentions after he got thawed out of the ice, after being frozen since World War II, and he's talking to two teenage kids, and they start or teenager-ish kids, and they start laughing at him like, "Oh, you're an icer, huh?" And he goes, "What?" And he goes, "Oh, you're one of those people that actually believes that he was frozen alive and thawed out, when clearly it's just the Avengers hiring somebody else to wear the suit and carry on the legend."
So he's like a 9/11 truther.
Yeah, and even Steve, like, surely you don't believe that a guy stayed frozen and alive all those years.
Right.
But yeah, as I've said before, Mark Waid is doing Lord's work and is sent at Marvel. And if you haven't checked it out, his first issue of Captain America came out this week on Comixology. Oh, hey, speaking of comic book news, did you guys catch that big what the fuck moment this week?
Are you talking about Brian Bendis?
Yeah. Why the fuck does DC want any of that? You know what I mean, right? I mean,
Well, Chris can have him.
They always disassembled.
I'm not going to miss Bendis leaving, but that's because I'll never forgive him for Avengers Disassembled. He's done a lot of other good things. Like he's helped nurture a lot of really important talent at Marvel. I think Kelly Sue DeConnick has basically sworn that she owes her career to him, and maybe if I get that mistaken and someone's listening, forgive me. But he's done a lot of work to help get the character of Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, kind of ready for prime time. And there's a long history of this. I mean, we can think back to times like, of course, when Kirby left Marvel in the 70s to go work for DC, and then 10 years later when John Byrne was the superstar at Marvel and he quits and goes to DC and writes Superman and Wonder Woman. So there's kind of a long history of this.
Well, yeah, but Bendis has just been so, integral to Marvel for so long. I thought Ultimate Spider-Man was great, and I thought so many other things he did were just really, really terrible.
I thought Powers was great. I always liked Bendis when he was working on his own characters. It was only when he was
Powers was good.
When he was working on my favorite ones that I hated his guts.
Yeah, it was the Sentinel, right? Was it? No, it was the Sentinel or the Sentry, the character he made up, who we all pretended had actually secretly been in Marvel for decades. And
Jessica Jones is the worst Mary Sue in comics, right? Like she's just terrible. But
you've obviously never read Mina Harker in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
I have, but I find like the first issue of Jessica Jones, like when her origin is wrapped in with all of that she dated Peter Parker and like everything else, and I think that the problem with Bendis in his comics is that he's not actually writing for us. I think he's writing for himself. I think Bendis has an audience of one when he writes comics. And sometimes we agree. Sometimes he writes. I agree with you about Ultimate Spider-Man. I love that book. And when he writes Powers, I thought it was great. But sometimes what he wants and what I want are very different. And I think that when that decision has to happen, he always goes with what he wants. But I don't blame him for leaving. I mean, he's been at Marvel for so long. He's probably kind of blocked. There's nothing really else he can do. He can't go higher up the cinematic chain. I can totally see why he would go just for a chance to write Batman, because that's what he's going to write. Something like that.
Actually, the early rumors are he's going to do Zatanna.
You're shitting me.
Possibly, because it is a rumor.
Well, if he brings it, that'd be funny, because he infamously said that Scarlet Witch was one of his favorite characters, and then he totally destroyed her for 10 years, right? So if he wants to write Zatanna because he's picked her, all I can say is I'm very sorry for all of my fellow Zatanna fans, because we're about to get screwed again.
Well, when's the last time there was a Zatanna monthly book?
Oh yeah, she's had a hard time keeping up.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of that, I don't always read everything monthly. I'm selective and quirky in what I pick up, but have they had trouble keeping a Captain Marvel book happening on a monthly basis? Because I keep seeing jokes about how Captain Marvel gets canceled and then restarted quarterly.
Well, that's not so much Captain Marvel. That's just Marvel. Marvel's been they go through these different publishing initiatives, and it's Marvel Now, or it's Marvel Legacy, or it's whatever. And
Marvel, please buy our books.
Yeah, Marvel, please buy our books, exactly. And Marvel, who's our audience now? and so then they relaunch everything, or at least they relaunch books that don't have a long history already. I mean, if you're the Avengers, you don't get relaunched, but if you're Captain Marvel, you do. I think.
Has Black Panther had that problem too? I heard it was really good for a while. I didn't have a chance to pick it up. Is it still got a monthly book?
We talking Marvel? Captain Marvel?
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I meant Black Panther over at Marvel.
Oh, Black Panther. Black Panther was canceled in a very controversial move. Ta-Nehisi Coates was writing it.
Yeah, I heard it was good, and I was meaning to check it out, and I heard it was canceled, so I just didn't check it out.
Well, of course, Ta-Nehisi Coates is one of the most widely read, whether you agree with him or not, one of the most widely read writers on race in America today. He's incredibly influential, and hiring him to write the Black Panther was, in my opinion, a real coup for Marvel. He's a longtime comics nerd, but he's never written comics before, so we had a bit of a learning curve in terms of that. But he was telling an interesting story from an Afrocentric point of view, and it was genuine, and it was a single artistic vision, and I was looking forward to seeing where it went. But as part of the Marvel's decision that apparently diversity is hurting them instead of helping them, it got canceled along with some other books.
Oh, if only diversity were in the top 50 problems that Marvel has right now.
You are preaching to the choir, Chris.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you.
You would think having a parent company with the deepest pockets, with bags of holding for your deep pockets, that they could afford to take a risk on something like that.
I think that the deep pockets might be part of the problem. I mean, nobody would turn Captain America into a Nazi unless you had no concern for the repercussions. It's like, fuck it, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
No, I can't really. I mean, that seems to line up logically, but I still got a bad taste in my mouth. And I'm so happy Mark Waid's writing Captain America now. So
yes. How many times has Mark Waid written Captain America?
It's been a few. This first issue, Mark Waid's been on a run. I mean, I hate to say something as facile as Mark Waid's doing really great work these days, because he sort of always is, except for occasionally here and there. I remember some Brave and Bold issues of his that were kind of subpar back in the early thousands. But his run on Daredevil was just legendary, and his work on Champions.
What's great to me, what I really admire about Mark Waid and about Mark Waid's career is that when comics have in some ways entered the phase of novelty hires, and Ta-Nehisi Coates is a perfect example of this, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
where you hire somebody not because they're a great comics writer, but because the rest of the world knows who they are.
Kevin Smith, yeah.
And so Mark Waid has, not only has he survived this trend, he has flourished in it, which is kind of amazing, considering a guy who's been writing comics for so long, and who's widely recognized as kind of a walking memory bank of comics trivia, can still be hired to write these incredible books and knocks them out of the park still. I just really admire Waid. I think I admire the hell out of him.
Yeah, he strides this meager world like a colossus. I'll give you that. And he owns a comic book shop back in Indiana. So
You're shitting me, really?
No, he wanted to have skin in the game, so he bought a comic book shop. I want to say somewhere near Muncie.
Oh, that's great.
Because the great thing about the Midwest is you can afford to live there on a writer's salary. So yeah. So anyway, it's getting about that time where I need to go pick up a small child from my local daycare center. Do we have any?
Just any will do.
I just show up. Is he short and blonde? Okay, I'll take him. Fuck it. The wife won't know. Any closing thoughts from anybody, or anything else we have neglected to get to yet?
Go see Thor for a great alternative to all the other stuff that's out there.
Yeah, go see Thor. It's fun. You'll like it.
Chris, anything? Closing thoughts?
If anybody out there listening is a fan of Westerns or the Rat Pack, I was going through my poster collection, and I have a beautiful 40 by 30 original movie poster of 4 for Texas, and it's gorgeous, but I just don't want to hang it in my house. So if you like it, get in touch with us through one of our social media outlets. I'll be happy to send it to you just for reimbursing me for the shipping.
There you go.
The BAMF Podcast has a page and a discussion group on Facebook, so you can check us out. And the BAMF Podcast has a Patreon. If you enjoy the BAMF Podcast monthly or weekly in some cases, please consider contributing. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you can help maintain this kind of quality programming on your local podcast menu. So
And we won't have to sell Walt.
We only rent Walt, okay?
Yeah.
we just
Somebody tells the target, you guys point and pull the trigger. I know.
On the plus side, things have been a lot quieter in the Middle East, but it's ethically questionable. So we'd like to, go see our Patreon and kick in $1 a month or something. So that's all I got. So
and avoid me having to be in a Speedo on a calendar, because you don't want that. Looks like
I have to go wash my head out.
Yep. Looks like a Chia Pet and dental floss. That would be bad. So.
We can only end with, yeah, that's going to be in my memory.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's just end there. That's right. I'll see you guys next week, and thanks for listening in.
Cheers.